Ladies and gentlemen, this is my great pleasure to introduce His Excellency, the Ambassador of India here in France. Thank you so much for accepting our interview today for those very special International Days of Yoga. Your Excellency, thank you again for accepting those questions. My first question would be, of course, regarding the situation facing COVID of India. Could you give us some news, some good news, we hope?
Well, first, it's a pleasure to be with you. And once again, congratulations to Heartfulness Institute doing such a wonderful job in India, in France, and in so many other places around the world to make people's lives healthier and happier. The situation in India, as you've all seen, we've gone through the second wave of the pandemic, which was extremely, extremely severe, with a very virulent strain of the coronavirus. Fortunately, I think the worst is behind us. Over the last month or so, we've been seeing a steady, very steady decline in the number of cases, in the number of hospital admissions, and certainly in the casualties also. Many of the big cities have done wonderfully well, particularly Mumbai, in containing this in this rather densely populated city. And very gradually and very slowly, we are beginning to reopen. But sometimes we worry that people run ahead of the situation and they become reckless. They become very casual about the COVID-appropriate behavior, and that again leads to the resurgence. Meanwhile, the vaccination drive is picking up. The first dose has been administered to at least 240 million people, and there's a sizable number, again, in tens of millions who've got the second dose as well. But that's still a very small percentage of the large population that we have. And so in the coming months, we are expecting to increase the production of vaccines in India, increase the number of vaccines that are available, and hopefully even further increase the rate of vaccination so as to have the entire population vaccinated by the end of the year.
Thank you very much for those, hopeful news. And so let's speak, of course, about yoga. Yoga is really our problematic of today. So we know that yoga comes from India, and a lot of experts that I had the chance to interview remind that and are very grateful for that. So why do you think that, especially today, yoga goes beyond the geographical boundaries? And we even heard that there are some specific yoga in COVID times. So why do you think right now, suddenly there is a conscious of the importance yoga coming from India?
I know that's a good question. First, I'd like to say some general principles. One is that, yoga has its origin in India. It's a gift of India to the world. But I think it is today really a global heritage. It is something that belongs to the world. One thing very important to remember about yoga, that it has a spiritual roots, but it is not linked to religion or religious practices. And it is not even linked to any specific cultural practices. So you don't have to engage in certain, what might appear to be somewhat unfamiliar cultural practices. So it's really agnostic in that sense from religion and culture. And therefore, it is easier for it to be adopted. The third, of course, the reason is the important factor is that you can do yoga alone. You can do it wherever you want, at whatever time. Normally, you can. Of course, there are some times which are better. It is costless, and you don't need any equipment. And if you do it the right way, you don't experience fatigue that you do with sports or high-intensity interval training, and you don't have injuries. So it's a very, very good way of improving your health. And then, of course, the best way for anything to spread is for people who experience the benefits to share that with the other people. And that's what's happened with yoga. I think it's really the word of mouth across the boundaries, which has helped. And, and of course, we all know the physical, the emotional, and the psychological benefits of yoga. And we can talk about that a bit later. But then there were also teachers who went from India to Western countries, to countries in the East, who introduced people to yoga. And then there were many people in other parts of the world who became practitioners of yoga themselves and teachers of yoga, and that's how it spread. But in more recent times, I think the single biggest factor has been the adoption by the United Nations General Assembly in response to a call made by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi to declare June 21 as an International Day of Yoga. And please, it's important to remember that this was adopted by a record co-sponsorship of 177 member countries out of 193, and adopted unanimously within just few months, few weeks, from September 28 or so to about the middle of December. It just shows that yoga was already something which every country, every society saw as being good for the world, whatever be its origins. And in the times of COVID, we've all become very health conscious. We've all become conscious about immunity. We've realized wellness is a very important thing and not just a medicine. And yoga, we've all in this period of time experienced grief, loss of closed ones. We have felt disruption of human relationships. We have felt a sense of isolation, being locked up in our houses, in our rooms, with no social relations, anxiety about our future, unable to do exercises outside our home, feeling worried about our economic future. All this has had a very deep psychological impact on smaller or larger measure on everyone in this world. Now, yoga has many, many, many advantages and benefits. One is the direct physical benefit. It improves your mobility, flexibility, agility, strength, balance. These are obvious outward physical benefits. But then there are also, if you practice yoga right, you realize there are physiological benefits. You're in terms of your, let's say, cardiac, heart parameters, your blood pressure, your other, the way your internal organs work. So there are physiological benefits which are scientifically proven. But there is something else which is deeper, which is that it helps to unify the emotional, the physical, and the psychological being in you. It makes you a more centered, calmer, more grounded person, more even in your emotional responses, more relaxed, and in a greater sense of harmony between you and the outer world. So I think it's apart from the fact that it makes you a healthier person outwardly and inwardly, it has also had tremendous psychological advantage in coping with the extraordinary and unprecedented challenge of COVID. So all of these factors have been contributing to it. And since in 2014, UN General Assembly adopted June 21 as the International Day of Yoga, it is celebrated with absolute enthusiasm across every country in the world. You think of places where you would hardly imagine any Indian footprint or influence, and you see people celebrating, practicing yoga. And I think that's been the one advantage, is that it's made people at least explore what is this yoga about? And some of them have become converts. And which is why I also feel that, organizations like Heartfulness have done tremendous work internationally, besides India, in explaining the real meaning of yoga and in educating people, teaching people the right techniques, the right attitude. Yoga is not just technique, it's attitude. Also, it is so all of this the spread of yoga would not have been possible without the extraordinary contributions of so many organizations, including the Heartfulness Institute.
Thank you very much. So another question would be, what could be for you the 3 principles that make yoga universal? 3 principles applicable by everyone who are looking at us, who are listening at us. 3 principles that make yoga universal and that each of us can apply.
First, I think we must demystify yoga and not think that you have to be some person deeply involved with Eastern philosophy, spiritualism, to be a practitioner of yoga. Every human being in this world is a potential yogi, is a practitioner of yoga. So first principle is, remember, this is not something out of the ordinary or something extraordinary. Second, to recognize that yoga is a way of life. It is not half an hour of high intensity or low intensity interval training or physical training. It's a way of life. It's an attitude towards, and it's also about the right thoughts. It's about right thinking. It's about the right action and the right way of living. And it is only possible if you recognize that there are three elements in yoga which are important to practice. One, of course, is the asanas, which everybody is familiar with, which is like the physical motions and movements and positions and postures, which each of them has both physical and physiological benefits. So it's not just that you have a better balance, where it may have a great impact on your metabolism, for example. The second aspect is pranayama. Now, prana means breath. Now, breath is life. When you are living, you're breathing. Most of the time, we breathe very badly. And pranayama is a breathing technique that has many emotional, psychological, as well as physiological benefits for people. It is an extraordinary way of improving your blood circulation, your breathing, your mental balance, your emotional response, and sense of relaxation and peace. And the third is meditation. Now, meditation, or what we call dhyan, is to me the most difficult of these three, but the one that is the most important, because, you know, in a sense, it helps you control your mind and have a sense of controlling your own mind. Is not about making it dumb or denying anything. It's about being able to center your thoughts in the right, channelize your thought energies in the right way. So that's a very important part. And finally, of course, is the relaxation part. You know? So we start with this whole, and everyone must remember that, yes, it's very important to get a good set of teachers in the beginning. Because if you don't do it the right way, then you're going to have injuries. You will not have the benefits. But if you do it the right way, you can yourself become a teacher down the line. And that, as I said, is a most inexpensive, costless, independent way of keep making yourself a healthy and a happier and a more balanced human being. So it's not, and I'm seeing this in France, that there's so many people who practice it, who lead normal lives as professionals, as working people, as just people who are going about their lives, but they spend some time every day. And again, you don't have to be very, very purist that, it has to be done at the crack of a dawn before the first light comes on, and that these are the practices that have to be done. I mean, sometimes when we think of perfection, we don't do anything at all. And therefore, keep it simple, follow the basic tenets, which all your teachers will teach you. And the good thing is that many here, for example, in France, I can say, have been able to adapt it somewhat to the lifestyle and to the needs over here, without in any way diluting its essential core principles, philosophy, traditions. Because, sometimes you do see in the West and somewhere else, it's been innovated and kind of changed in a way where it really has very little resemblance to yoga. It's just more like an exercise, Pilates or high intensity. So to me, as I said, asanas are very important, but so is pranayama, that is breathing the right 5 or 6 major techniques, and then meditation, followed by relaxation. So sometimes the slowness of it all teaches you a new rhythm of life.
Excellent. So yoga, we understand, transcend cultures, transcend geographical boundaries. Yes. Your Excellency, may I ask you if you're doing yoga? And if so, which posture do you prefer?
First I have to be honest that I'm not a regular practitioner. I do, but pranayama and meditation is regular. And once I spend half an hour doing that, I just feel so rejuvenated. But in asanas, I think, again, there are people who go to very high levels of complexity, and someone might say, headstand is what I like the most, nowhere close to it. But I think I like all the basic postures and motions and movements there. I certainly think Surya Namaskar is about the most complete, sun salutation. And once you've mastered it, there is nothing that moves every part of your body the way Surya Namaskar does. And it has always been my aspiration to keep increasing the numbers, keep doing it more. If I were doing it more regularly than I do, because I have so many other interests. I often play tennis. I like walking, especially in Paris. So I like to get up in the morning and walk along the river, which is next to my house. So then it's sort of, you have to choose what you do. But pranayama and meditation is something which I always do, at least those two parts. But the day I'm able to do all three, then, you feel like a very different person altogether for the rest of the day.
Wonderful. So a little word to everybody who are looking at this video. Maybe would you incline all ambassadors to test some yogas with you, since you're doing it? Or
yes, I think some ambassadors would tell you that Shavasana, which is the sleeping posture, is the best. But how many of us actually think we are doing it the right way? When we are lying in that posture, how many of us are really relaxed? And if you become conscious of the tensions in your body and your muscle, even when you're lying, you realize how poorly we sleep and how poorly we lie down. So even if you mastered Shavasana the right way, when every part of your body, from toe to the head, to the fingertips, is in a complete state of relaxation, you ask people how difficult it is to even do that one posture. But I would say, things that are particularly useful for working people are, the ones that improve your strength in your back, the ones that improves your flexibility in terms of forward bending, in terms of, sideways movement, because in terms of your mobility of your neck, the worst possible cost of people sitting on chairs, the neck and the shoulders and things. And people do it, I don't want to get into specific asanas because different teachers will tell you how to approach it in a different way. But if an ambassador were to go and ask a yoga teacher in heartfulness, the teacher should say that, look, your worst problems are related to the way you spend 8 to 10 hours of your day. And that may be your neck, your shoulders, your back, even, and people find their ankles their feet getting tight and things. So, and they will tell you what it is is required to get it. But I think that everything that activates your inner self, and people usually do. Every yoga session starts with some relaxation and movement, which are very basic, and then you get into some of the more basic things. I even feel that people think Tadasana is very simple because all you have to do is to stand on one leg and raise your hand, and it looks so simple. Ask people how easy, make some of the ambassadors do it, and how long can they hold that position. So it's good use. And again, the other thing I always feel is there's no one size fit all, which is why I feel that an individual relationship between a yoga teacher and a yoga learner is very, very important. It's very important. And the pace, what is the real weaknesses, strengths, that's something they'll have to take. It's okay for public purposes. We have these mass classes. That's to arouse your interest, but not to make you into a yoga practitioner.
Okay. So we'll remind that just a little bit of curiosity about yoga helping those people who are doing the diplomacy of all the countries to help them and to get a better language of peace So we understand.
I think that, you know, it would be good if the institutions like Hartman's actually make that offer, that we can, and small groups of 10, 15 works well, because the teacher can actually go around and look carefully and say, okay, this is, because you know that they can be terrible. I mean, if you don't do it right, if you don't do anything right, if you don't drive properly, you'll have an accident, right? If you don't play a sport with the right technique, you will injure yourself. It's the same with yoga. But people think it's something I can just learn on my own. I think it is good to have someone watch over you when you do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, to allow us to have this interview
great
today.
Pleasure.
A last word of hope, maybe, to all the people who are looking, a word of hope, including yoga.
No, well, I think we've really, the world has been tested in the most unimaginable, unprecedented way over the past year in every sense of the word. And we've also seen during this period the resilience and the larger humanity of people who have staked everything to be of help to others, not just as a responsibility of the governments, but as people. And to me, in this dark hours, I see the bright light of the way science has responded, in one way to give us vaccines so quickly, and in the larger humanity of our people who have, whether it is in India or anywhere else in the world, have done all they could with their resources, with their time, to help those who needed it most. And I see what lies before us is a general unity across every country, a unity of purpose in bringing everyone out of this darkness into light, and not just those who have the resources, but also those who don't. And I see that this pandemic, this great challenge, would also hopefully have given us a lesson. It's a disruption that should set us on a path to make a more compassionate, kinder, more caring, more just, more equitable world for all, in which the value of human health, their future, their well-being is at the center of all our efforts. And I think everyone has become conscious of how, for example, health is so important, and why everyone needs, governments and international organizations need to do more on this. So I'm quite hopeful when I see the challenges, and when I've seen how the world has responded, that we are always capable of rising above our narrow identities, narrow boundaries, our immediate concerns for larger good of our people. So hopefully that is one. And yoga has been a prime example. When 193 countries voted to adopt June 21 as the International Day of Yoga, they showed that the world can rise above the narrow boundaries of identity, of culture, of nations, to come together for a larger cause. And today, on June 21, just close your eyes and imagine that across the world, in thousands of cities, people are united in one common purpose, in the practice of yoga. There's no better symbol of unity of mankind.
Thank you. Thank you again, Your Excellency. We wish you all the very best. And thank you for being with us.
Pleasure, absolutely. And pleasure to meet you.